are starting to talk. Not in the loud way, not in the way rumors run through a room, no. In the quiet way, the way truth moves when it's tired of hiding. It started with one voice, a text in the car where your name appeared. Are you seeing someone? My friend asked, like it wasn't obvious, like people don't notice when middle names and little hearts start appearing in contact cards. I spilled my guts, and later that night I told you everything while you held me on a dim street. You said you were covering for a friend and couldn't stay long, but not long turned into an hour, standing on the street behind market plots with your arms around me like the world had paused there. You told me people at work were teasing you, that they noticed. I laughed and said if the worst thing they thought was that I had a twinkle in my eye, I could live with that, because that was the worst they saw back then. Now a friend sits across from me with the look people get when they've watched something break for far too long, and he says, I know I'm hard on him. And I already know who him is, because in this story there has only ever been one man whose name still echoes in the empty spaces of my chest. He says, most of that comes from pure anger at the way he treated you and her. And there it was, both of us. Two women standing in the same storm on different sides of the battlefield, and suddenly the room got very quiet. Because people are starting to see it. They're starting to piece together what time had already written. When did it begin? Was it 1 year, 2, 3? Does it even matter? Because relationships like this don't explode overnight. They grow, they root, they wind themselves slowly through ordinary days until one day you realize you know the rhythm of someone's laugh better than your own breathing. And people remember. They remember the texts, the constant ones, the ones that she warned you about years ago. She said this doesn't feel right, you two talk too much, and maybe she was right because you didn't stop then, and I had no idea. It wasn't until much later that you told me her fears, her worries, her stress, and later, when she said she felt like she was on the back burner, when she said I don't feel comfortable with how much you two talk, you still didn't stop, and I still didn't know those were her fears. Truth is a strange animal. It sleeps quietly for years, but eventually it wakes up and starts walking through the room where everyone can see it, and now people are watching you. And me. Your brothers, your family, the town. The same men who once stood beside you are now standing arms crossed trying to understand how someone they love became someone they barely recognize. I hear things, not because I ask, because truth travels and because I keep getting pulled aside. It's overwhelming, exhausting. It sends my heart spiraling again and again and again. I hear you've been crying. I hear you've been trying to explain, telling stories that leave pieces out, trying to build a version of events where you and I don't look like the villains, but half-truths wobble. They collapse under their own weight, and people notice. If what had happened had been the worst of it, maybe it would have blown over faster. But the truth leaking out slowly is like a gas leak that won't shut off. Eventually it causes an explosion until the whole truth is revealed. I warned you about that. That's why I told you to tell her everything, the full truth, not the half-truth, because she deserved it, because you wanted two different things. You wanted the best of both worlds, and you also wanted the future you talked about with me. The one where the kids ran through the house laughing while we sat by the fire, whiskey glasses in hand, and they teased us for kissing in front of them. My friend pulls me back to reality. And he said something that cracked my ribs open. He said, I know the depth of your emotions, and that alone felt like someone finally acknowledging that loving someone like you was never going to be simple. He said, I know it's hard for you to let him go, and he was right, because hope is stubborn. Hope flickers even in rooms where the lights have been off for months. He said, there's still that flicker that he could break free from everything weighing him down and choose you. Choose. Such a small word. Such a violent one. My friend kept talking carefully like someone holding a fragile glass. If he did choose you, he said, there's a chance for reform. Reform. Not romance, not fairy tales, reform, because love like this doesn't grow in gardens, it grows in battlefields, and sometimes only after the war do the flowers bloom. It wouldn't be easy. Of course it wouldn't. Trust doesn't grow back like grass, it grows back like bone. Slow, painful, crooked sometimes. He would have to work every day to earn your trust again, and that sentence sat between us like a mountain. But then he said something else, something that shook me a little. Love can give people strength to ascend past their darkness. And for a moment I saw the man I once believed you were becoming, the man who laughed with me in quiet rooms, the one who looked at me like he recognized something in my soul, the one who made me believe that maybe just maybe, we were both finding our way to the same place, but my friend didn't romanticize it. He didn't soften the truth. He said maybe he doesn't have the capacity to do that with her, and the room went silent again. Because that is the cruelest part of love. Sometimes it is about who someone becomes in the presence of you. Maybe with you he could move mountains, and I felt my chest tighten because I never wanted mountains move. I wanted honesty. That was all I ever asked for, a window. You would hold him accountable. And that word, accountable, echoed like a gavel, because loving someone does not mean excusing their darkness. It means standing in the doorway and saying, you don't get to hide here anymore. He finished with this: if you two ever find your way, your honesty and boundaries would be the only thing keeping him above the board. And I sit there, holding all of it, the anger, the hope, the truth people are finally starting to see, and the quiet ache of missing someone who is still alive somewhere in this world, because that is the part no one else sees. While everyone else is watching the story unfold like spectators at a trial, I am still the one who remembers the beginning, the jokes, the long conversations, the way a friendship slowly turned into something neither of us was brave enough to stop. Maybe we tried, but we were never strong enough to stay away. We still aren't, because somehow we always find our way back, blocking goodnight, goodbye kisses at midnight, long messages explaining why we couldn't, and still we come back. You and I always find our way back, and maybe that's not so wrong. Maybe we aren't crazy when someone whispered the word soulmates, because I still feel it, and I still believe it. And now the world is finally starting to see what we tried so hard to ignore, but the strangest part is this. Even with all the voices, even with the truth walking openly now, even with the anger and the warnings and the mountains of consequences, there is still a quiet place inside me that whispers something impossible. You are not weak. You are simply vulnerable, and that does not make you less of a man. If anything, it makes you brave enough to feel, brave enough to break. The only thing I fear is that you will let the emotions consume you instead of learning from them. Feel them, accept them, but remember, we are all human, and redemption does not mean that the story was never wrong. Was it wrong? Yes. But is it wrong now? No. Now you are free to become the man you once said you wanted to be, but that story, that redemption, that climb out of darkness is a path only you can choose to walk.